Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. It's another week, another day made by King Jesus, and we get to study his word together. We are continuing this week in Matthew. It's going to be great. For those of you who are partners, this Saturday will be our next partners Zoom meeting. So be looking for that link in your email inbox here today or tomorrow. If you are not a partner, you can join us. There's a link in the show notes to crosstocrown.org partners, and you can sign up to contribute and support our ministry. And one of the things we do as a thank you gift to our partners is once a month or so, we have a couple hours on usually a Saturday morning, or at least morning for me. For some of you, who knows where you are. We've had some folks from England, although I haven't seen our England brothers around, or at least UK brothers lately. Anyway, this week it'll be about 10:30 a.m. Mountain Time, and we talk about the current series and then whatever else is on your mind. So we will get a good opportunity to discuss Matthew really 1 through 5 this Saturday. So be on the lookout for that, and if you would like to join us, become a partner, and we'll send you the link. Okay, so I noticed Sana said something about my title here. So there's a song, I think from the 1960s, and I can't remember who sang it. It was a woman. Some of you probably know. But basically the chorus went, "You're so vain. I bet you thought this song was about you." Right? Well, that's what I put in the thumbnail. I bet you thought this sermon was about you, this Sermon on the Mount. Because here's what we're taught to do. And for some of you, you've heard me say this again and again, and you know where I'm going and you get it. But for others, either you're newer around here or it just hasn't quite stuck yet. We come to a passage like this in Matthew 5:13. You are the salt of the earth. In verse 14, you are the light of the world. And you have been trained to read that and say, okay, this applies to me because everything in the Bible applies to me except the parts we don't like, right? When it talks about judgment or God being angry or something, oh no, that's not about me. I'm forgiven. I'm in Christ. But we come to something like this. You are the salt of the earth, and we get our little devotional books and we read them, and it has, you are the salt of the earth. And then it has, a half a page or a full page of someone articulating what it means for you to be the salt of the earth and how to apply it to your life. Or you hear a sermon from your pastor on Sunday, and he's on this verse, and so he has to make sure that the congregation knows they are the salt of the earth, and explain what that means and give you something to take home, because the Bible is written so that someone can get up in front and teach you and give you something to take home with you. At least that's the predominant view of things. That is not what's happening here. Even good teachers that believe and affirm that context is king, that's how they handle a passage like this. That's not what's going on here. Carly Simon, yes, thank you. Yeah. So now you're going to have that song in your head all day. You're welcome. You're so vain. All right, you are the salt of the earth. Who is the you? Well, we don't have to guess because, like all text, this has a context. Remember how what we call chapter 5 began. And having seen the multitudes, Jesus went up to the mountain and sat down, and his disciples came to him. Well, who are these disciples and who are the multitudes? Well, let's go back. Verse 23 of chapter 4. Jesus was going in all of Galilee, teaching in their synagogues. Who was it who gathered in the synagogues? It was the Jews. Yeah, Israel. Exactly. Jesus was going teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, which was promised to Israel, healing their diseases and the sicknesses among the people. What people? those in Galilee and the synagogues and all around. His fame went forth through all Assyria. He's healing them, driving out their demons. There followed him many multitudes from Galilee, Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, beyond the Jordan. These are all Jewish areas, and they follow Jesus because he's teaching of the good news. The kingdom is here, and he's healing their diseases and so on. And he goes up in the mountain because he sees this multitude of Jewish people. That's who he's talking to. He's not talking to you and me. So then when he says, you are the salt of the earth, he is talking to the Jews gathered around him. But if the salt may lose savor, in what, or rather, I think it's better, by what will it be salted? You Jewish multitudes that are following me here, you to whom I have come and preached the good news, and I've healed your sick and so on, you are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its savor, if it loses its saltiness, by what will it be salted? That is, the salt. If the salt loses its saltiness, by what will the salt be salted? The expected answer is nothing. Right? You are the salt of the earth. You are to bring flavor to the earth. If you lose your flavor, by what are you going to be flavored? You see the point? If salt isn't salty, can you put something on salt to make it salty? No. Because salt is what makes it salty. If the salt is not salty, there's nothing to salt it with. It is good for nothing from now on except to be cast outside and to be trodden down by men. Where this is going is verse 17. Do not suppose I came to throw down the law or the prophets. I did not come to throw down, but to fulfill. We must be deeply familiar with the law and the prophets if we're going to understand this. And again, I'll remind you, though our Reformed brothers and theologians try to tell us that what that means is Jesus came to obey the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments last forever because they are God's eternal moral standard of righteousness. None of that is true. None of that is in the Bible. What he means is everything written in the law and the prophets for the Jews, Jesus did not come to abolish or throw down those things, but to fulfill them. Fulfillment of their promises, including judgment. So there are so many of these promises, but look at this one. We saw this in our Zechariah study. An issue of the Lord's word regarding whom? Israel. The Lord, as he stretches out heaven and founds earth. Interesting that we have heaven and earth here. And forms the human spirit within. Behold, I set Jerusalem as shaking doorways for all the people round about. Meaning, all the people are coming against Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is going to be this shaking doorway, this trembling doorway. And the peoples are going to come through the door to Jerusalem. And in Judea, there will be a siege against Jerusalem. God is going to bring the nations, the peoples, against Jerusalem. And it shall be on that day, I will make Jerusalem a trampled stone. This word trampled is the same word as the trodden that I just read to you. A trampled stone for all the nations. Everyone who tramples it when mocking shall mock, and all the nations of the earth shall be gathered against it. That kind of imagery is what Jesus means here when he says, You are the salt of the earth. If you lose your savor, you Jews are the salt of the earth. If you stop being salty, there's nothing by which you can be salty again. You'll be good for nothing except to be cast outside and to be trampled down by men. God said through the prophets like Zechariah, this is what's going to happen to Jerusalem. So for the audience listening to Jesus, these multitudes that are following him, he's saying it's a warning. You're supposed to be salt. You are supposed to flavor the land. But if you have no flavor, you're good for nothing. You're just going to be tossed outside and trampled by men, trodden down by men. You are going to be under the siege and be destroyed. There's one other thing here that I find interesting. This word, this word that if the salt may lose savor, that word can mean if you are made foolish. So the idea of salt that becomes tasteless becomes a metaphor for being foolish. Could be a double entendre there kind of thing. All right, so then he says, you are the light of the world. You, Jews who are listening to me, you are the light of the world. That is not just a random statement, and that's not applying to the church. Remember, we saw this in Isaiah 42. Thus says the Lord who created heaven and established it and bolstered the earth and the things that are in it, who gave breath to the people upon it and spirit to those who tread on it. I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness. I will take hold of your hand and strengthen you. I have given you as a covenant to a race, as a light to the nations. Jesus says to these Jews that he's talking to, you are the light of the world. So here's where we have to read the Bible carefully and thoughtfully. Jesus will later say, in John's gospel, for instance, that he himself is the light of the nations, or the light of the world, right? That's what you think of. Jesus is the light of the world. Here, Jesus says to the Jews, you are the light of the world. Well, which is it? Jesus or the Jews? Well, yes, because Isaiah 42 says about Israel and Jacob. Everything I just read to you, that's about Israel and Jacob. The nation of Israel fails to do what God called them to do. That's what's going on here in Matthew 5. In John, Jesus is saying, I am that servant. I am the ultimate Israel, and I will fulfill God's purpose for Jacob, for Israel, to be the light of the world, the light of the nations. You see the difference? Here the context is Jesus saying to the Jews, this is what you're called to be. You need to do it. And of course, most of them are going to fail. You are the light of the world. A city set on a mountain is not able to be hid. Now, if you weren't with us Thursday, you must go back and watch that video or listen to that podcast before you go here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I went through all of this on Thursday. I'm so thankful the LSV translates this, a city set on a mountain. Most of your translations say a city set on a hill. We hear this common phrase even in our own day, a city on a hill, a city on a hill. It's the same word as in Isaiah chapter 2. Remember this? Where Israel, it says, in the last days, the mountain of the Lord shall be manifest, the house of God, that's the temple, shall be on the tops of the mountains, shall be raised above the hills, nations shall come to it. Israel is to be the light of the nations. Shine the light, and the nations will come. And many nations shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, and he will declare to us his ways. For out of Zion, the city, shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, the city. You, Jews, are a light of the world, a city on a mountain, and it's not able to be hid. He is saying you are the fulfillment of Isaiah 2, what the prophets said would happen. Are you seeing that? This is not about you and me. This is about the audience to whom Jesus is speaking. And there's a warning, or at least an admonition to them. You're the light of the world. You are a city on a mountain. And what is supposed to happen? The nations are supposed to see your light and come to you. Nor do they put I skipped a phrase. A city on a mountain is not able to be hid. Think of that imagery. This is obvious, right? If a city is built up on a mountain, people all around can see it. Nor do they light a lamp and put it under the measure. You don't put a bowl on top of a lamp. Rather, you put it on the lampstand and it shines to all those in the house. That's what you do with the light. You put it out so people can see by it. Well, if you are the light of the world, or like a city on a mountain, you're supposed to be on display. You're supposed to be glowing so everybody can see it and the nations come to you. So, Jewish people, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good works and may glorify your Father who is in the heavens. See what Jesus is doing here? You people, I've come to deliver the good news of the kingdom. It is here. You are the salt of the land. But if you don't do what salt is supposed to do, you're going to be thrown out and trodden underfoot. You are the light of the nations, the light of the world. You're that city on the mountain that the nations are supposed to stream to. So shine your light brightly so that all the nations will see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven as a fulfillment of what God said you would be and do. Now let me point out another inconsistency that I hear and say and see a lot. He's going to go on in chapter 6 to rebuke the Pharisees for putting their good works on display. Right? You're familiar with that. They throw a big parade for themselves when they give money, for instance. And they love to make it obvious that they are fasting. Oh, we are so godly. We haven't eaten in 2 days. We are fasting. We are miserable. We were low. And Jesus says, no, put oil in your face and smile and don't let anybody know that you're fasting. So what we do is so often we take that and we say, look, nobody should know any good thing you do. Don't draw attention to it. If you give to missions or give to the work of the ministry, make sure nobody knows. That's to be a deep secret. Because Jesus said, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. Don't dare make known that you helped this person, that you gave to this, that you are striving for obedience. Don't do that. No. That's all wrong. And yet Jesus says here, let your light shine before men that they may see your good works. It's good to read the Bible more than once, right? Here, Jesus is telling the Jews, you are to do good works and you are to put them on display so that the nations will glorify your Father who is in the heavens. That's the command. Now, they're going to have some nuance. If they switch to the self-righteous, look at me, I'm so righteous and wonderful, and become hypocrites, then they are just like the Pharisees and they're violating God's instructions. But if they hide their good works, they're also violating God's instructions. Do you see that? We are to be, well, let me say that. The Jews, see what I did there? The Jews were to be righteous in front of the nations. That was their purpose here. Do not suppose I came, and this word is translated here, throw down, right? I did not come to throw down the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them. Not to obey them. You don't obey the prophets. I did not come to throw down the law or the prophets, meaning the law of Moses is what he's talking about here, what we call the Old Covenant law. God gave those commandments to Israel. And he said, if you obey them, I will bless you. If you disobey, I will curse you. And the prophets showed up, and they called Israel out on their wickedness again and again and again, and said, the day is coming, like I just read to you from Zechariah, the day is coming when Jerusalem will be under siege, and I will bring the nations through the trembling doorpost and destroy Jerusalem. Jesus says, look, I didn't come to dismiss all that. I didn't come to set it aside to abolish it. I came to fulfill. So to the audience to whom he is speaking, the Jews, if they don't obey God's law, they will be on the receiving end of God's fulfillment of the promise to destroy them. I have read to you at length in other series, Deuteronomy 28, where God spells out the curses. There's a little bit shorter version in Leviticus. Let me read a few of these verses. Leviticus 26, God's giving Israel the law. He says, if you walk by my ordinances and observe my commandments to do them, I will then give you the rain in season. The land shall yield its produce. The trees of the plain shall yield their fruit. For you, the harvest shall overtake the vintage. I will grant peace in your land. You shall give chase to your enemies. 5 of you shall give chase to 100. I will look attentively on you. You shall eat the old and old things of the old. You shall bring out the old out of the old and the new. That's a weird phrase. I will place my tent among you. I will walk among you and be your God, and so on. But so anyway, I don't want to go too quickly through that. That's a summary of the promised blessings if they keep the law. But if you do not obey me, but refuse to comply, then I will turn and do thus to you. I will gather difficulty upon you. I will set my face against you, and you will fall down before your enemies. And if up to this point you do not obey, I will do more discipline to you, 7-fold for your sins. I will smash the insolence of your arrogance, and your strength shall be to no purpose. If after this you walk sideways and are not willing to obey me, I will add to you 7 blows in accordance with your sins. I will send the wild animals against the land. If by these things you are not disciplined, but walk sideways with me, then I too will walk in skewed anger, and I will strike you 7-fold for your sins. I will bring against you a dagger, avenging the cause of the covenant. When you are hard pressed for want of bread, then 10 women shall bake your bread in a single oven, and they shall dole out your bread by weight, and you shall eat and never be satisfied. Now, if by these things you do not obey, but walk sideways with me, I will walk in anger against you. You shall eat the flesh of your sons, and you shall eat the flesh of your daughters. Like literally, you will eat your children because you're so hungry. And I will lay your cities waste and make your sanctuaries quite desolate, and I will devastate your land. I will scatter you into the nations. Those are the promises of the law. And then the prophets come along and make the same statements. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Jesus shows up. He's preaching the good news of the kingdom. The kingdom is here. But for his Jewish audience, the multitudes gathered around, he does not want them to think for a moment this changes the terms of their covenant. You are the salt. You are the light. You are supposed to be the city on the mountain that all the nations stream to. You better let your good works, meaning your obedience to the law, let your good works shine. And don't think for a minute that everything God said in the law and the prophets will fail to come to pass. For I say to you, truly I say to you, until heaven and earth may pass away, one iota and one tittle may not pass away from the law until all may come to pass. See the context? If you are disobeying the covenant, you will be subject to its curses. Heaven and earth may pass away. This is not just some hyperbolic statement. We saw this in Isaiah 1, drawing from Deuteronomy 32. Again, you have to go back and watch Thursday if you missed that. Heaven and earth are the witness when God gives the law to the Jews. And in Isaiah, heaven and earth are the witness that they have broken the covenant and they are subject to God's wrath. Heaven and earth will not pass away until all is accomplished. All what? All of God's fulfillment from the law. Meaning, I am going to destroy the wicked in Jerusalem. Not one iota or one tittle. That's like a dotting the I or a jotting the lines on the T, right? The smallest letter of the law. You can't dismiss, if you're a Jew, you can't dismiss anything in God's covenant with you. God doesn't grade on a curve here. Obey it all, Israel. Remember, the audience to whom Jesus is speaking is still under that covenant. Do not think I came to just set it aside. No, I'm going to bring to pass everything the law demanded, everything the prophet said would come to pass. I'm going to wipe out Jerusalem and make it desolate and punish all who have broken the laws, even the ones who've broken just the little dots and crossing of the T's, the iota and the tittle. It is more likely that heaven and earth pass away than that the Jews will escape God's wrath until all has come to pass. He's talking about 70 AD here, people. Therefore, whoever may loose one of these commands, what commands? The law of Moses. Whoever may loose even the least of the commands in the law of Moses, and may teach men in this way. So if you loose, we'll come back and stress that statement, that word in a minute. If you loose one of the commands and you teach other men also to loosen one of the commands of the law, he will be called least in the kingdom of the heavens. But in contrast, whoever may do the commandments of the law and may teach others to keep the commandments of the law, he will be called great in the kingdom of the heavens. Who is it that is teaching these things? It's the Pharisees and the scribes. Verse 20, for I say to you that if your righteousness may not abound above that of the scribes and Pharisees, you may not enter into the kingdom of the heavens. Remember, the audience here, they are under every jot and tittle of the old covenant law as Jesus says this. Jesus says, I came to fulfill everything the law and the prophets promised, meaning the wrath and judgment for breaking God's commandments. So if you are one of those people telling the Jews you don't have to obey every jot and tittle, or if you are changing the law, then you'll be called least in the kingdom. But if you teach others to obey the law, you'll be called great in the kingdom. Now this word loose, it means to untie. like untie an animal, right? Whoever may loose one of the commands. So just think of the metaphor there. Think of the imagery. Who is it? Who is tied to the old covenant law? The Jews. So if you are one who loosens the people from the law as God gave it to the Jews, then you'll be called least in the kingdom. And if you're not more righteous than the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter the kingdom. Do you see the implication here? The scribes and Pharisees, those who were the authorities, those who were the self-designated teachers of the law, they had loosened the Jews. The Jews were tied to the law. They were loosening the men and women of the old covenant, the Israelites, loosening them from the law and changing it and twisting it to do what Jesus later will say. You took God's doctrine and you taught the doctrines of men as though they were the teaching of God or the law of God. That's how you need to interpret the upcoming statements. You've heard it said, but I say to you. I'm giving you the key here. Read ahead for tomorrow. The Pharisees took the law and the Jews who were tied to the law, and they loosened the Jews from that law. In some cases, they made the law more stringent than God did. And in other cases, they made it less severe. And God is angry with both. The law was not given for the scribes and Pharisees to change it to whatever suited their desires and intentions. You see that? This section is not about you and me keeping the Ten Commandments. We are not and never have been under the Ten Commandments. You tracking with me? All right, let me see your comments here and then we'll call it a day. Alfred says, I go a weekly Bible study and this is so hard for most of them to understand. It is not all about you. Yeah, we've been trained that way so much. Daniel says the law for Israel is in full force. Well, it was, but that covenant is over now. But in Jesus' day, it was in full force. Darren says, now that the temple is gone, I would say that, yeah, very good. 5:17 should have been a wake-up call. Exactly. Be the light. Be salt. Be salty. Shine brightly. Do your good work so the Gentiles can see, or else God's going to come and crush you, which he did in 70 AD. But if God said the law is in perpetuity, then it would seem the law is still in force for the Jews. Well, remember, the law was the heart of the covenant, and the covenant is over. The Old Testament also says the Aaronic priesthood is in perpetuity. Those are not intended to be interpreted as never-ending. Again, look at the context. Does that mean that the law will pass away after all came to pass, like 70 AD? Yes, exactly. Sona says that fits with everything you've said so far, I think. Good, excellent. I like to be consistent. Clink says, is God requiring perfect obedience from these Jews in order to be blessed, or a life gradually defined by obedience? Well, I don't think God is okay with disobedience in any occasion. So, yeah, I think the expectation is perfect obedience. Just curious, do you think there are any prophecies unfulfilled? Yes. I think the end of Isaiah, for instance, is talking about our day, but the ones that are unique to Israel are all fulfilled. Least equal unsaved in the kingdom of the heavens. Yeah, that's a good question. that statement seems to indicate they will be in the kingdom. But if they've been teaching men that it's okay to loose one of the commands, it's, I don't know. That's a good question. It seems like they're in the kingdom. I go back and forth on that. Does that make sense? By saying those who teach others that they may loose one of the old covenant commands, they'll be called least in the kingdom. Sounds like they get in the kingdom, but there will be at least a verbal, rebuke, because they get in the kingdom, but along the way they're saying, you can go ahead and break God's law given to Moses, kind of thing. The problem with that is that's what the scribes and Pharisees were doing, and Jesus says they don't get in. So, yeah, I don't know. So do heavens and earth in Matthew 5 represent the law and the prophets? No. Did you watch Thursdays? They don't represent the law and the prophets. They are the witnesses called by God to bear testimony to the law and the prophets. Jim says, so good, Doug. Excellent. I'm glad it's clicking. Amy says, I've always found least in the kingdom strange. Are they in or not in? Yeah, I don't know for sure. But perpetual has meaning though. Yeah, but olam is the Hebrew word like ion of the New Testament. It means ages. So long periods of time, but doesn't always mean eternal. Leviticus 2:13 connected to Matthew 5:13 or screaming goat worthy. Leviticus 2:13. Oops. Every gift of your sacrifice shall be salted with salt. You shall not omit the sacrifices of the salt of the covenant. I don't know. It doesn't strike me as relevant, but because he's not talking about sacrifice in Matthew 5. I don't see it, but it's possible. Darren says, meaning as long as it is in force. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say perpetual means that, but I would say that is when it is destroyed, and therefore then it stops. See, does that make sense? Okay, good. All right, so read ahead into chapter 6 and 7 and 8 with this in mind, and focus on the loosing of the law, the covenant, the commandments, and how God is going to judge them if they do that. All right. I'm going to leave it there. Have a great day. We will see you tomorrow. Grace and peace to you.